Welcome back, my friend, to my video series on how to make this whole fitness thing a heck of a lot easier so you can achieve and maintain much better results with far less effort. I'm Matt Schifferly, your humble host. As always, in today's video is all about making it so much easier to improve your proficiency and performance in pretty much darn near everything. So as we're going to apply with all of our strategies in this course, we have our 4 basic tenets of how to make things a lot easier. Tenet number 1 is the objective that we're after. Now, when it comes to training for performance and proficiency, we have to recognize the fundamental process that's responsible for this, which is, of course, we create a stimulus or a functional demand, and then our body adapts to the stimulus in order to accommodate that demand. And this is one of the most direct types of training that we can do because all forms of physical activity are a stimulus for functional performance. The key with improving your proficiency and performance in a particular area is making sure that your training is specific enough for the very performance you're after. Now, the example I'm going to be using in today's episode is the coveted kettlebell clean. Now, kettlebell work is something I've dabbled with for many years, and it's also something that I struggled with from a proficiency standpoint for a big deal, a big part of that. And the kettlebell clean was one of those things I just could not get. It didn't matter how hard I worked at it. It didn't matter how much I tried to practice it. It always felt really awkward and clunky. So the first step in making it easier for that to happen was to define the objective of exactly what I was trying to do. Because we don't want to just have it kind of obtuse subjective of, I just want to be faster, I just want to be stronger, I just want to be fit or whatnot. When it comes to the ability to train adequately and make it a lot easier, you want to get your very specific demand dialed in. So for example, with this, it wasn't, I want to get better at kettlebell work or I want to get stronger. I had to get really dialed in of I want to specifically detail the kettlebell clean on both sides with a hand switch. And that is exactly what I wanted to improve my proficiency in. Now, when you get much more specific about the objective that you're going after, that makes it so much easier for the second step, which of course is cutting the fluff. And in my case, this meant going into the gym and removing a lot of the stuff that didn't directly correlate to an improved kettlebell swing. So if I was like doing 100 different exercises, or if I had a big kettlebell workout and I was swinging and snatching and Turkish get-ups and all these sorts of things, I had to basically say, all right, I'm going to remove most of that for the next couple of weeks, and I'm specifically going to train techniques that improve the clean, specifically the clean and nothing else. I'm not going to really bother with snatches or anything else for a few weeks. And at the onset, this is going to be a little bit hard because when we often are chasing after just hard work and effort rather than proficiency, that means cutting out a lot of the stuff that doesn't really directly train what you want. So the more you dial in exactly what you want for your functional ability, the more specific you are, the more you can say, okay, the Turkish get-up's not going to help me here. The clean is going to be more specific as far as unilateral clean. I'm not going to do two arm cleans. I'm not going to do dumbbell or sandbell cleans. I'm going to get very specific on just that and practice that and supportive exercises. And that's why the second big mistake that people make when it comes to trying to do proficiency where they pad it out with a lot is they think, well, I'll just practice it more. I'll just do a lot more, and so I'll just try to do 500 cleans every single day. But there's a big mistake that comes with this. Yes, of course, practicing more can certainly be part of your strategy if you're not practicing very much in the first place. However, there is a diminishing rate of return with an exponential increase in cost. And a lot of times when we endeavor and we're like, I'm just going to practice a lot more, we're not actually trying to train for better performance. We're just reinforcing whatever habits and poor performance we already have. Because as the old saying is, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So initially I started doing cleans and I had really poor shoulder stability. So my shoulders were really elevated and not packed, so I kept trying to do this a lot, not recognizing that the more I did that, the more I was reinforcing the poor pattern of scapular instability. When your goal is, I'm just gonna practice a lot more, again, your goal is not to actually improve your proficiency, your goal is just to do more work. The work has once again become the goal. And when work becomes the goal, we will seek whatever methods of efficiency we can get to in order to make it easier to do the work, but not to actually achieve the objective, which is responsible for the results you want. The third step in the strategy is to take a multi-influential approach. This means incorporate lots of strategies and pieces that can collectively influence what you want. Now, when it comes to performance, what I recommend is take what you want to do, particularly like the kettlebell clean, or if you want to become a better runner or whatever, and list out all of the functional ingredients that you need in order to do that thing well. It may help to have a coach or someone who's really familiar with the exercise or the performance help you with this. But you want to look at your performance with everything you do kind of like a recipe or a collective puzzle with lots of pieces. So in the case of the kettlebell clean, it's like, well, I need a good strong hip drive. I also need to have strong shoulder stability. I also need a strong grip, because when I started, my grip wasn't very good. I also need to get very comfortable with holding the kettlebell in the rack position. I was always holding it like this and stuff. So listing all those things out, now I have a little bit of a training program of what specifically to work on for improving the kettlebell clean or whatever you're trying to do. So what I would do is I would walk around in a rack position or just hold this. And this helped me to get more comfortable with just this. I was training it much more directly, because if I just did a bunch of cleans, I was actually in the rack position for a very short period of time. But now, holding it for just a minute at a time, and then I could switch around. Now I was drastically increasing the amount of practice at holding the rack position, even though I was only putting in about 2 minutes of work. Second was grip and shoulder stability. So I would do standing, or I would do farmer carries, unilateral farmer carries, where I was really mindful of keeping my shoulder back, tight grip. So directly going after each of those ingredients collectively adds up to a much better performance than if you're just trying to do it however you can 1,000,000 times a day. And then finally, strategy number 4 is, of course, how do you achieve better personal alignment with what you're trying to do? Now, a lot of times this means fitting practice into your regular schedule that works with work or school and other various things in your schedule. It's where sometimes grease the groove can really be a good strategy. Because what I did was I thought, well, I just don't feel like doing cleans at a particular time. So I left a kettlebell in the middle of my living room, and whenever I was watching TV, we had commercials back in the day. Commercial break, okay, it's time for my clean practice. And I would just practice my cleans for one commercial, and then another commercial would come up, and I would do the same thing. Didn't need to be super structured, but for me, it worked really well with my schedule because it gave me something that allowed me to practice it very frequently, but it wasn't exhausting me at the same time, and that just worked for me. Another thing that really helped with my personal alignment was recognizing that the kettlebell that I was using was a little too heavy for my level of strength at the time, because I was just getting into it, and the standard and all the books and everything I was reading is, well, if you're roughly this size and weight and everything, you should be using a 24 kilogram kettlebell. So that's what I had. And it was always a little bit hard, especially at first. And I was getting stronger, but it was still a struggle. But everything changed when I was like, I'm gonna go with a 16 kilogram kettlebell. And that allowed me to really dial in the technique. Oh, this is for my level and my strength at this current point. This gives me a lot more ability to hone in some of the finesse of the technique, to let it just float around And then I was able to level up rather than forcing myself to just lift the heavier weight that wasn't really best for my level of ability. So in the next video, we're going to be talking about two objectives of healthy eating and body fat management, making it a lot easier to do this stuff with much better results. I'll see you in the RDP kitchen momentarily in the next video. Till then, be fit and live free.